and welcome to Local Impact. You can make a difference. It is Thursday, April 16th, 2026. And tonight we have special guest with us, Julie Tacker. I'm going to just read you a little bit about why Julie Tacker is my go-to person for information on the California Sunshine Act, it's actually the Ralph M. Brown Act. That act is about transparency, is about open government, and it is the crux of what most of us who've been looking at any of these corruption chronicles or government issues over the course of the last 10 or 15 years, it's the crux of it. I wrote, "The happiest corruption, sleaze, lies, and suicide in California beach town." Julie comes up probably more than once, but at least once specifically mentioned. I found that I had mentioned the Brown Act 33 times, which is about once every 12 pages in the book. That tells you the importance I place on it. And most of us misunderstand it. I still get mixed up. It's embarrassing to admit. I still sometimes get my Brown Act and my First Amendment mixed up when I'm talking about them. I'm just going to read you one tiny little paragraph from my book. I had just been appointed to our local sanitation district where in the end we had someone convicted of self-dealing. But around that same time, activist Julie Tacker warned me that the board had violated the Brown Act by hiring and determining the pay of a consultant in closed session. I was embarrassed and worried. I asked her to explain and said that the sewer plant's attorney hadn't advised the board on that. I then went to my city attorney who confirmed, yes, she was right. I asked the board to correct it by bringing it back on the agenda in open session. Thanks to Tacker, it was a practice that I was able to challenge time and again, and soon agency attorneys countywide ceased the opaque practice, thus allowing the public to weigh in on the employment and salaries of agency executives before boards approved their contract. I'm going to explain that just a little bit because it's kind of confusing. The principle is that the public ought to be able to weigh in on what it costs us to hire chief executives or hire executives or significant consultants. Practice in industry is that you negotiate, you review your CEO, and then you determine what they're going to be paid next. Well, you can't do that in government because we're the shareholders. The people are the shareholders, and we get to determine whether we at least get to have a say. So they can review a CEO of any local agency, but they cannot agree or sign a contract in closed session at the same time that they're reviewing, because the public needs the opportunity to comment on the cost of our chief executives. Am I right on that, Julie? Did I get that right?
You're 100% right on that.
I'm going to tell you a quick story. On the board of the Air Pollution Control District, and the board determined that they were going to both review and negotiate the terms of the contract of the CEO. I knew that that was illegal because of what Julie had taught me. And this is a little technique that people who are in office can use. When we were in closed session, I specifically said, we cannot do what you wish to do tonight. We can review our chief executive, but we cannot approve a contract or approve the terms of that contract in closed session. We must do that in open session. The chair said, no, we can do that. And I said, no, you can't do that. So she looks at the attorney, Ray Beering. She says, can we do this? And he said, oh, yeah, you can do this. So I said, well, okay, you can choose to do this, but let me read you exactly what the Brown Act says, which was just a short paragraph or two. If you choose to do it, I will leave this session. And when I leave, because I have to explain, I will tell them I left because you are doing something illegal that's a violation of the Ralph M. Brown Act. All of a sudden, everything changed when I got up to leave, and they all were, oh, and they did it right. I noticed soon after that they were doing it right in a lot of, so word obviously got round thanks to Julie, and thanks to my other friend, Kevin Rice, who suggested that would be the appropriate action to take. What I'd like to do tonight is have Julie just talk to us about the kinds of things she's done, because she has probably created more integrity, or maybe forced more integrity, forced integrity, is there such a thing, in our county than anyone else. And she now has the ear of our district attorney of the Public Corruption Unit, which is fabulous. So Julie, I'm going to let you take it away. But first I'm going to say thank you. You are still my go-to person, as you know, whenever I have a question.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate that. And let me just tag on, not only can they not do the review and negotiations in closed session, they cannot hire and in that open session, unless it's at a regular meeting.
Oh,
So
they can't do a special
they
meeting.
cannot do a special meeting. So some agencies who meet quarterly, they are in a real pickle if they're looking to hire. So they really have to have those ducks in the row and those negotiations already hammered out and ready to go so that when they are in a regular meeting open session, they can do it with the public.
And one of the
So
things I have seen is it's not at all uncommon in a situation where staff or the board or council wants to hire someone that they will hold or do anything that they think the public might not like. They will hold a meeting, they will hold a special to do it. And they will hold it on a day and a time, usually like 3 p.m, when the public is probably not going to be able to get there.
not get there, not paying attention, and they only have to do it in 24 hours ahead of noticing a special meeting. It's a shady way to play ball, but they do it. Many
Yes.
agencies do it, and
And
that's
it's
why.
not something we should allow as the public. Well, it's
Right.
the law
And
doesn't allow it.
they are allowed to hold a special meeting, but special meetings are for special things. And it better be special and not something that could wait to a regularly scheduled meeting. And most of your agencies will have bylaws or policies and procedures that define that they are meeting on the second Thursday of the month or the second and fourth Thursday of the month, whatever they specify in their bylaw or their policy and procedure is the regular meeting. And then
Right.
anything that falls off of that would be a special meeting, and it really has to have special purpose. You were talking about closed session, and maybe we could talk a little bit about that, Debbie, in that
Yes,
there are
definitely.
only three subjects that can be considered behind closed doors, and those are real estate, personnel, and litigation, whether they are under threat of litigation or they are threatening to litigate with someone. Those are the only three subjects that can be considered in those closed sessions. And those are pretty interesting if you become familiar with the code. They must cite a code next to the item. So if it's a real estate code or a personnel code or the litigation code, if you're familiar with those, you actually will learn quite a bit about what is going on in there. You may not have the particulars. When it is real estate, they do have to put either an address or an APN number that identifies which parcel they're talking about in closed session. And as far as personnel, they can go into closed session for review. Say a general manager or city manager, they have to identify that person. But if it's a personnel matter about someone in the line staff, they will not identify that person. And then as far as litigation goes, they do have to say whether it is a threat of litigation or that's anticipated litigation, potential litigation where they would be the one to sue someone else. So those things are identified on those agendas.
Very specific in the Brown Act itself, exactly how you should notice for closed
Absolutely.
session. I did put some links in chat. It is actually California Government Code 54950. You can go to the state and read it, and it's fairly straightforward. But then I also have a PDF, which you'll have to forgive all my little comments, but they may be useful to you because it's a PDF I've been using for many years, for I don't know, 10-15 years. I've uploaded that, which is the whole Brown Act, because when you go to the state, you get it in little, paragraph by paragraph, and sometimes it's a little bit harder to follow. But then I've also uploaded a link to Ventura County's information on the Brown Act. I look at different counties and cities' websites, and some of them are really good. They really seem to want to engage the public. The Ventura County information on the Brown Act is excellent. So I've uploaded that link too. These are lots of resources people can use. Code is very clear in the Brown Act for closed meetings. So
Yes.
apologies for interrupting you,
No,
Julie.
that's okay. And I have caught agencies violating the closed session noticing requirement.
Constantly.
And one hiccup that depending on how much I like that agency, I will let them know that they're going to violate the Brown Act unless they verbally identify the code section in which they're going into that closed session. So
if they don't put it on the agenda correctly, they can still in the meeting.
No, it would have to be written, but they still, in every meeting, they do have to say it out loud, orally.
Wow.
Yes.
We
And
are
so
going into closed session to discuss blah, blah, blah,
this,
blah,
this,
blah.
this, and this.
Mhm.
And usually the mayor or the chair will punt to legal counsel and let them read it,
Mhm.
but they do need to cite which items are they're going in to discuss.
The other thing I ran into as mayor was that we would always have closed session at the end of the meetings. And so
Mm,
no one's going to sit around at 9 o'clock at night and wait for us to come out. But the law, I believe, said that you have to report out when you come out. So I would
yes.
insist every time we came out that we would report out, not at the next meeting, which they usually do, and you
Mhm.
should do, but we would report out on the night because that was the
In an
requirement.
empty room, you should be
Mhm.
reporting it out
Always.
because somebody
Yeah.
might be there. Even if it's the cameraman for the hired videographer, they need to be able to hear it.
Well, what I find is that they usually send the cameraman home.
Yes, that's true. But you should be able to, if you're not able to be at the end of one of those meetings and you want to know what the
Hmm.
report out is, you can contact the agency the next morning and say, what was the reportable report out of closed session? And they should give it to you immediately. There should be no
Yes,
delay.
yes.
Some agencies have done that where they don't report out till the next meeting, and sometimes that's 2 weeks later, and
Hmm.
that is not allowed. And so
Or in
when
some
people,
agencies that seem contrary to my idea of public engagement and transparency, some of them now only meet, you said some quarterly, but there are a lot of them that now meet every other month or so. Well, why
yeah.
should you wait 2 months to know the
Oh, for heaven,
outcome
a
of
lot can go
a
on
meeting?
in those 2 months
Hmm.
after there's been some direction given that the public would then not know that that's
Yeah.
something that they approve. So you definitely do want to know what occurred in those closed sessions. So I've had some of what you talked about going into closed session and the matter with the of a new executive director or CEO. Most recently, similarly, I caught the city of Pismo Beach having a closed session with they had done the negotiations, and then when they came out, that was on the agenda, but the actual that there had been a contract in closed session was apparent, and that is not allowed. They're not allowed to actually discuss the numbers in closed session. It has to be in open. The council all knew the amount of money before the public was wrong. That contract has to be in that open session, and that's where the board or council will talk about the number. And most of the time, the negotiations have been hammered out between the attorney and the person they're hiring, but the board may say have some objection, and that should be in front of us. So,
And what was the outcome of?
oh, it ended up at the district attorney's office, and without compelling certain board members to fall on a sword and say that there was a contract in there, they would have been litigated, and they didn't pursue it. So Pismo held their own, and it was disappointing, but it was very apparent for everyone. That's something when you asked me to speak tonight. I may be pretty adept at what the law requires, but how I use it or what I expect from a complaint. If you really want to go to the mat on a Brown Act violation, first of all, you have to realize that nobody's been prosecuted on a Brown. There's been no big, there's some case law, but there isn't anybody going to jail, paying fines. It's kind of a mushy law.
I
It's
did not
mushy.
know that.
So what it does is embarrasses the agency, and I'm happy to do that with a complaint. And I'm also happy to, get the press to cover it or get the DA involved. And usually when the DA gets involved, if they send a letter, most agencies back off from what they've said or done, and they won't do it again. And that is what I hope when I file what is called a cure and correct. So the agency's done something wrong, and the way to do it is to start over brand new and either notice it properly, hear it properly, open it up to the public properly. Whatever they didn't do, they need to do it again. And between the time that they done it and when they choose to cure and correct it, they really should not be acting on the action that has been brought to their attention.
So, say as a member of the public, you see something which you're pretty sure is a Brown Act violation,
Mhm.
then what action do you take? Do you write
So
to them
I
or?
write, I write,
Mhm.
and there are templates on the internet to write a cure and correct. And I most recently did one. San Simeon CSD right now is they are a 5-member board. They have 2 vacancies. They're operating with 3 board members only, which means every single action they take must be all three board members in agreement. And they took a vote, and only two voted in favor of it, and the third one said no. But the interpretation was all messed up. They thought because the three of them, two is a majority, they were able to take action. Oh boy. Was I
I didn't
my
realize that. Is
Oh
that
yeah.
specific to that board, or is
No,
that
it's anytime you have a five-member board, a seven-member board, and if there are vacancies or someone's not in attendance,
oh, I
the
see.
majority of the count,
It's the quorum issue.
it's the quorum. So the quorum has to act in unanimity there in San Simeon. The last few years, they've been without these two people, and they had a 2-to-1 vote, and they proceeded as though that was an affirmative, and it wasn't. And I shot them a cure and correct immediately, and from they have agreed that that was wrong. And the attorney, I was in direct contact with their attorney, and she stopped any further action from taking place, even though the directive was given based on this false quorum.
And who is that attorney? Because there are a lot of attorneys who seem to act at the direction or at the pleasure of the
Mhm.
council or staff, as opposed to the pleasure of the law.
Right. So this firm is that the young woman's name is Nubia Goldstein, and she works for the firm White Brenner up in the Sacramento area. And she, because San Simeon's far away, she participates by remotely. They use Google Meets. That particular meeting, she claims she didn't hear the question, and so that she couldn't guide them accurately. I don't
That's
quite
fine.
buy that, because the issue has always been, since they only have three board members, a vote of three is they need three. So I did win on that. And they aren't proceeding with the action that they took. There's been some of that kind of thing that you call into question. Another kind of fun one for me, it becomes fun to say, wait a minute, it's not a thrill or anything, but what's satisfying is righting a wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And for last year, the Integrated Waste Management Authority had bought a new building, and they were having board meetings in their building that wasn't ADA compliant. The Brown Act requires accessibility to board meetings. So they didn't have that. You have to go up a few steps to get there, but they also have a wheelchair lift. Well, the wheelchair lift was out of service for over 2 years before they even bought the building. I caught them having 5 meetings there without that accessibility component. While I wrote the cure and correct, I didn't press that they actually have the meeting over, because no public attended. Nobody tried to attend. So since they were acting kind of in a vacuum anyway, but the point was made. And here's the law. And they aren't having meetings in there unless that wheelchair lift is working. That they argued that was okay. Completely wrong. Completely
Yeah.
wrong. And it was important to make it accessible. So that's
Yes.
another thing that's important for the sunshine and the transparency, is that it is accessible. And if you need a different language, you can call ahead, and those agencies are supposed to make it accessible for you. If you need a hearing impaired or something like that, or visual, you can ask for better accessibility for that same transparency that we all look for.
And
So,
I see that the Grover Beach agenda talks about that, tells you how that's a constructive thing. You do have to give them some advance notice, I believe, but
yeah, you should, and but
reasonably.
they should be ready. They really, I mean,
They
they
should
can't
be
be ready
ready.
for
Hmm.
Swahili or
Yeah.
something, but they should be ready for it. They do ask, most agencies ask for 72 hours ahead, and it's funny. Sometimes they'll put that special 24-hour meeting notice out, and
Oh, yeah.
it'll say notify us 72 hours before.
Yeah.
Well, you can't. You
Yeah.
can't. If you just got the
They
meeting
forget to
notice,
change, they forget to correct the agenda.
yeah, they're using a
I
template.
do have a funny story about that. Grover Beach has oversight committees that have been established by ballot measures,
Okay.
and citizens believe that these committees are exercising oversight over the taxes we pay, that they're being paid, that the taxes we pay are being used as we voted them to be used. But they kind of stopped happening for a while, and then
Oh
they were
boy.
always a rubber stamp until a young attorney came along and realized that all of this was really off, and alerted a lot of people in the community to it via Nextdoor. the app. We came to support him. And we got to the meeting. It was, 3 in the afternoon on a weekday, but we knew. And we got to the meeting, a whole group of people. It wasn't being recorded. But
Ah,
not only was it not being recorded, there were no microphones. And
mm,
so here they were sitting there, and we really couldn't hear them. But
yeah.
on top of that, they were all texting one another.
Oh, oh.
So
So
we had
technically
some pretty,
those text messages are public
our public
record,
record.
which is a different law. The California Public
That's the
Records
Public
Act
Records Act.
is a different than the Brown Act, and people get those confused sometimes. But definitely learn both so
Well,
that you can use
it
those
got more
tools.
entertaining because we had one fairly elderly former party head who is kind of feisty. She kept saying, I can't hear. And then somebody else shouted, Disabilities Act. And so
Yeah.
they stopped the meeting and they brought us these little ear sets with little things,
Mhm.
and they didn't work.
Oh
And the reason
no.
they didn't work is because they only work if you're using microphones.
Oh, yeah,
It
I
was
could see
hysterical.
that.
And
Oh
I mean, it really
gosh.
was funny. And you can see the meeting. I have it up on my Corruption Chronicles YouTube site. It's worth
Mhm.
watching if you just want a
Just
good
for that.
just 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 for this wonderful
Oh
little
gosh.
lady saying,
Yeah.
"We can't hear you." And then she's tangled, and they brought them out and they're all tangled up, and
Oh
you'll recognize
no.
what the video is because it's
Uh-huh.
this little lady trying to untangle these things.
Oh no. Oh my
Very, very
goodness.
funny.
That's
Anyway,
funny. Yeah.
to your point, yes.
Yeah, that is important, that accessibility. And maybe you remember, give you another example of a Brown Act violation. The Brown Act actually requires your agency to hold its meetings within its boundary. And it's been probably what, 10 years ago, Debbie, when the South San Luis Obispo County Sanitation District had interviews for candidates to be the executive director over there. And they held them at the Howard Johnson's or whatever in San Luis
Yeah, yeah, at the
Obispo at a
Marriott or something. Uh-huh.
hotel
In
in
a
San
different
Luis
in San Luis
Obispo.
Obispo. I mean,
Yes,
12
and
miles
you
away.
have hotels in South County
We
in
do.
the district. South
Indeed.
County Sanitation is one of the largest districts in our whole county geographically because it covers the three areas. It just made no sense to hold it up there. And the district attorney, that was a slam dunk. You did this wrong. So and it's hard to do over again when something like that has occurred. So there's also called a cease and desist. So yeah, we saw you do something wrong. Now I will file a cease and desist, and not expecting that they can do it over because sometimes you just do it over. But the cease and desist, they have to answer and admit they were wrong and promise not to do it again. So there's
That's
another
another
bit
remedy.
of satisfaction
Mhm.
to righting them wrong because it's not going
Right.
to happen,
And
hopefully, until
the
the
issue
next board misses it, messes up.
the
But yeah,
issue
you
isn't to
can
be a thorn in their side. The issue is to make sure that meetings are open and
absolutely 100%. That is for sure. Another example of something that I wrote a Brown Act violation, a cure and correct on, and this has been, I would say 10 or 12 years ago. The county of San Luis Obispo was seating their chair, and it happened to be Frank Meacham. They were putting him in the chair, and
the Board of Supers.
they
Mhm.
didn't take public comment on kind of the rotation. They nominated someone, they voted, and there he was, and no public comment. So I wrote that cure and correct, not really expecting that they would honor it because it was a slam dunk and it was done. But he did.
Good
Frank
for him.
did. The attorney said, "Oh no, we did everything right," which was wrong. But Frank said, we needed to open it up to the public. So the next board meeting, they re-agendized, opened it up to the public, and he did not take the nomination. And so this one for me was a big one because then it changed the course of really history in how that they put Debbie Arnold in as chair. And then that changed the rotation to what it is today. It's been changing from district to district in that order. It really shook it up. And I
Well,
was,
the beauty of that is that Frank was a real public servant. He
mhm,
really was doing the right thing, even if it meant that he would lose his leadership role. And I have huge
exactly.
respect for that.
Totally. So that was a big one that made headlines in the Tribune because people don't see the Brown Act get enforced. and
Hmm.
based on one little lady in Los Osos, or big lady.
Good going.
Yeah, but if it's wrong, it's wrong, and that's why, because I have a relationship with the district attorney's office, and I just love that Dan implemented the public integrity unit. He ran on
I
that,
agree. Yes,
and
I told him I would support him if he did that,
yeah, and he
and I
he
did.
ran on that. He
Hmm.
did it, and I contacted him within about a week after he took office, and I had some things that he fixed very quickly. But his that public integrity unit, they see what I write them, and I write them pretty frequently because I catch agencies doing different things that are.
It's taken some time, though. You didn't immediately have a relationship. It took time for you to build that,
Oh, it's I
to build the
for
trust.
the for them for sure, but building my reputation in the county 20 years. And
Oh yeah,
I
that
had been a
preceded
board
you.
member.
Hmm.
I had been a board member. I call it caught a bug when I was on the board because I learned the Brown Act, I learned the Public Records Act, the FPPC rules, all of that stuff. And then special districts have their own government code that they live by that is different from cities. And so I kind of am specialize in special districts. That has all been because of my work on a board. I loved being an elected official. I loved helping people. And then when I chose not to run again, I have been helping people in other communities. I get phone calls and tips often, people asking, hey, is this right? Something doesn't look right. And I'll take a look at it. And oftentimes they are right. If it doesn't smell
Yeah.
right, there's something wrong.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And
Mhm.
I know the state operates under different sunshine laws that, yeah, at the state level.
State
Um,
level.
but I didn't know that I mean, districts are a subdivision of counties, which are a subdivision of the state. But do
Oh,
districts
no,
not
they're
operate?
not. Districts aren't a subdivision of
They're
the county.
independent?
They're subdivisions of the state. They're the independent
Okay, that's
districts.
right. They are subdivisions of
Mhm.
the state. That's right.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah,
saying, they don't operate under the Brown Act?
they do under the Brown Act. They
Oh, they
do.
do. Special
They do.
districts.
Yes,
Okay.
special districts do. But
Hmm.
having those different, there's, several different acts that bug I caught. And I have been, dabbling in people say, well, you're from Los Osos. Why are you here? And I'll just say, I have the right to be here.
Yeah, you're entitled to
I
be
can
anywhere you
I
like.
can come
Hmm.
from Mars and be here.
Hmm.
You can't shut me out for that.
Hmm.
But one of the things that having this relationship with the Public Integrity Unit, one of the deputy DAs has coined the phrase the tacker effect. And so, and actually, Dan Carpenter one time said, "Could you just stand in the back of the room at one of my council meetings?" I said, thank you, I'm honored, but
Yeah.
it's not that simple. And so I didn't, but it does, I do feel it. And then I take heed and I just say, everyone should have the tacker effect.
Yes.
When the public is the tacker,
Hmm.
when you,
That's
the
our
public,
job.
are watching, you are the sixth board member, sixth council
Hmm.
member, whatever, however number, or whatever agency. You should be treated as if you were a board member because that is your money. Every one of these agencies is
Hmm.
spending your money, and
That's
you
right.
have a voice. So I've become pretty good at exercising it, and then I'm not afraid to call them out when I see something wrong. And the Brown Act is
So
pretty
let me
easy on
ask
that.
you a couple of questions. And like you, came to it from serving in local government, and I learned it and I understood it. And most importantly, I understood the principles behind it.
Mhm.
And I observed very often that the city manager, who was a good city manager and taught me a lot about good governance, but was still buying into the public are really the public are the enemy, not to the extent that they are now, but they get in the way of what we want to do. The Brown Act is just a plain hassle. And we can have, and he would say to me, well, this is something that's kind of embarrassing for the council to talk about. So let's just do it in closed session.
Oh
Say,
boy.
oh, no, 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 not while I'm the mayor.
Right.
But that was common practice. And
Wow.
it probably still is, but it's probably not quite so out in the open. And the other thing that I'm seeing now a lot is that the city council will say, because they've been told by the city manager, who
Mhm.
seems to be on a level with God, and they've been told by the city manager that, oh, you mustn't talk to the public. That could be a Brown Act violation. So I hear that from people every time they don't want to talk to you. Oh,
Mhm.
that might be a Brown Act violation. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that. What is it a Brown Act violation for your council member? And now many of us have districts in our cities, or any
Mhm.
council member or the mayor. Is it Brown Act violation for them to talk to the public, to respond to an email?
Not at all. It absolutely is not. And that is, I mean, they are your, if you are the elected official, these are your constituents. These are the people you're supposed to talk to. They put you in that seat and you should be able to answer their question. Where Brown Act violations come about is if three council members, board members, whatever your agency calls it, three, if you have a five-member board, three of them cannot communicate on the same subject or commiserate or come up with a
On
plan
something that is going to be on the
on that's
agenda.
something that's going to be
Mhm.
on the agenda.
You can talk to
Sometimes
one other council member,
you can
but not a
commiserate
majority.
with another
Mhm.
council member and you can
Mhm.
say, I support this for these reasons, and vice versa. You can share your opinions on the item, but don't go to a third one. Neither of those two can go to another one.
Because
This
that's
you're
kind of a
married.
daisy
You're
chain.
married to
Yeah.
each other, and that's it. That's all you can do. Then some people, it's getting so strange with using email. A member of the public can send an email to all five of the council members and the city manager, but then you see city manager has to be careful not to respond to all the five board members or
Reply
council
all.
members
Yeah.
reply all, but the resident or the public, they can reply all to anybody they want and they can't violate. It's
So if I'm a member of the public and I have a burning issue that I really want all the council members to be aware of, are
Mhm.
they violating the Brown Act if they all speak to me?
No.
I agree with you.
No, they can all talk to you,
Yes.
but
And they like to
they
say that they can't. And we're finding
that's
now our city council is so cowed by the city manager, they don't respond to email at
that
all.
yeah, I'm finding that too. They
Mm.
don't. And that's unfortunate because that's a way of communication for people. It's also a good way of keeping a record of what you've said. And, I even in my
Yeah, it's
work,
a written
I
record.
like having the record. The public doesn't violate them.
So
It's
then
it's
let's
the
go back to this
act.
whole thing about texts. So we're sitting in this oversight committee, and there's two ladies there sitting next to each other, text, text, text. And we'll often see community development director will be working on her computer, and then you'll see the city manager, and then you'll see her, and it's
Mhm,
pretty obvious that they are
mhm.
communicating. Is it a Brown Act violation to text during a meeting about the content of the meeting?
It would be only if they can text each other to say, the air conditioner's too cold, or
Right. But
or
there's another
yeah,
method for that. There's
yeah,
Robert's Rules of Order where you just say, point of order, the air conditioning needs to be turned down,
for sure,
Madam Chair.
yeah. So they
Uh,
can, I mean, they could
mhm,
communicate the air
mhm.
conditioner
Right.
problem, but if it's on the item about this, they really should be speaking above board for all of you. And then you, the citizen who maybe think what they've said is something that's on the agenda and that they're kind of behind a secret whisper or something, I would wait till after the meeting, but then I would definitely use the Public Record Act to get those texts and see if there's something in them that would have changed the decision or whatever was being discussed. It would have
Now
had
that
impact.
that goes to something that you were involved with another district. I think it was Los Osos, where the fair political practices came down very strong on even the appearance of corruption is corruption because it has the same impact. Now that's not the Brown Act, is it? Or was
Nope,
it?
nope,
That was
not the Brown Act.
fair political
They're,
practices.
that would be the FPPC, and they're looking at conflicts of interest, any misappropriation of funds from campaigns, and those kinds of. And I'm not sure which agency you're talking about or which issue,
There was one
because
where there was a CEO's contract was up for renewal, and he sat at the meeting during all the contract discussions
oh gosh,
and ended up being fined, I don't know,
yeah,
$5,000 or something. It set precedent with the public
hmm,
record.
that might have
That was
been
some time
sensible.
ago.
Yeah, I don't,
Maybe you didn't catch it. Maybe someone else got it.
I don't, I'm not. It's not ringing a bell for
Yeah.
me. Which
I think it might have been Karen Veely who got
Okay.
that one.
Karen catches some good stuff. She does.
Yeah, I think
Some
I'll ask her to
embezzlement
come.
and the same,
Yes.
yeah. We've both been pretty good at snooping out embezzlers and
Mhm.
looking at budgets and those things. You too.
Which in
And
fact
that's
is the
important
job,
too.
should be the job of our elected officials to be
Oh,
paying attention to how
yes.
our money is being used
Yes. And
and to the
unfortunately,
public.
there should be, like we have the public Brown Act training and the public
Hmm.
FPPC, there should be a small accounting lesson for how to read these budgets because these are not
Hmm.
the same for
Hmm.
your,
No.
your little hamburger stand or your cookie business. They're different. And people really have a hard time understanding how those big, large numbers and many categories and all of those things, how that all works and what. So it's actually hard to find embezzlement, but some of us have become pretty adept at it. Unfortunately, some of the payroll disclosures have been really clamped down. We can't see how much the employee is contributing to their retirement. And that seems to be one of the avenues for embezzlement. So we can only see what the agency is contributing, but we don't know what the employee is. And if they're padding their pay, that's one way they do it. Padding their vacation, they
Yeah.
get more vacation pay or just take more time off. Those are some of the ways that it's sneaking in. But that's where the Public Record Act is it's really tight and hard to see personnel stuff and the money that way.
Yes. And there was something we talked about at the beginning before we started the meeting, something that I said, now don't let me forget. You need to talk about this.
Oh, well, I happen to have today is April 16th. So today is New Times. I have a commentary in the paper, and it is about a ballot measure that the citizens of Los Osos have put on the June ballot. It has to do with purchasing a defunct elementary school from the school district. The ballot measure forces the Los Osos Community Services District to buy the school with this tax measure. Every parcel, vacant or developed, will have to pay $185 a year for 15 years. Then the money drops down to $100 a year pretty much forever because that what they're going to do is purchase the $6 million school and maintain it. There is no money in the budget for this purchase to actually improve it. And people in Los Osos, yes, we are park hungry. We have one community park. So people are looking at this school as a potential park and they want to maybe add pickleball courts or they definitely want a dog park. But the amount of money is such that at the same time that they want this park, our community services district, who manages our fire department, we need a new fire station or to millions of dollars renovate the station we have and improve our fire service contract with Cal Fire. My opening line in the commentary is that we are at a financial crossroad. Do we want to spend our bandwidth of tax money on buying a park or paying for the fire service? And unfortunately, the park is on the June ballot. The fire service ideally would be on the November ballot, or really it should have been on the June ballot first. Now it's looking like they may even push it out 2 years. I don't like to pay taxes. We have a huge school. We have two huge school bonds here in Los Osos. The San Luis Coastal School District is building millions and millions of dollars worth of improvements to the schools. I'm paying attention to where the money went, where the money's going to come from, and what does our community really want. So my personal opinion is I'm going to vote no on the park measure so that I have money still to put towards fire when that measure comes forward. And unfortunately, these little districts and people don't pay attention what their cities are doing or their community services districts are doing too much. They just trust government's going to take care of them. Most people won't know. The idea of a park is shiny object and fun, and it would be great, but if at the sacrifice of good fire service
So
is my
I want
concern.
to talk with you a little bit about funding of special districts. I know for a city, of all the property taxes we pay in Grover Beach, we get about 17 cents on the dollar. So except for the amount that we're paying, the extra 10% that we pay to fix our streets, that all comes to Grover Beach.
Right.
How are special districts funded?
Property tax, unless there are special tax like we have in Los Osos as special. So the property tax mainly for that goes through the district goes to fire. Almost all of it. We
I
have a little
see.
bit of lighting. and a little bit that we have some flexibility to fund certain things. How they operate are fully water fund, fully sewer funds, fully coming from rates and charges.
Right.
So they don't have a general fund,
I
and
see.
they don't receive any sales tax or TOT money. So it's tight. Special districts have it really tight, and enterprise funds are for those enterprises. So having to add if they want something else, they gotta
So in other words, they
run a
can't go to
ballot
the
measure.
county and say, hey, by the way, you're responsible for fire or whatever.
No,
Um,
but you'll see that Oceano divested its
yeah.
firepower because they could not keep up with the cost of
Hmm.
fire using
Hmm.
almost all of their property tax. They were with very little bit were they
Hmm.
getting to run their lighting department. They
If
only
they
have like
weren't
8
paying their
lights.
chief executive way, way, way more
Oh, Debbie.
than the chief
Yeah, yeah.
executive should
What
be
what
paid.
they've done by doing that what they have
Mhm.
done by hiring, and it was Pablo Ogren originally, paying him as much as they were. I believe he left at about
For
$206,000
a
a year.
part-time job for a little tiny
It
district.
really, I mean, it was full-time pay. He didn't have to work very hard because he could manage it pretty well, but it's salary, so there's no tracking his
Mhm.
hours, plus the benefit package. By doing that, they pushed up the cost to all special districts, and the
Yes.
cost of employing general managers. Everybody had to
Hmm.
now get in this zone of what the cost of a GM is. And
Yep.
what's happening right now, they don't have a GM. They just hired back Will Clemens to be the interim general manager. The Peter Brown that was there for a year and a half signed in February. So now they are going out for our RFP to find a new general manager. But the job description is going to change,
Hmm.
and the cost should go down because
Good.
that staff does the work,
Yeah.
and they really do. So they're gonna change how they do it, and
Good.
hopefully they'll get somebody good that's not money hungry. But they did get rid of their fire because of the extreme cost. What you and the rest of the county probably doesn't know is that because the county took over the fire service, they have contracted with Five Cities Fire Authority for the service to take care of Oceano.
Hmm.
But there's a deficit
They're not paying
in
enough. Yeah.
there's not enough coming out of Oceano.
Hmm.
So the
Yeah.
county is supplementing $350,000 a year for Oceano, and that's coming
I
from
think
you
we
and
do know
me.
that actually. Yeah.
Well, a lot
Yeah.
of people don't. And I look at little districts, especially San Simeon, who is struggling so they are on the brink of bankruptcy. And they have filed for dissolution to have the county completely take them over. Yet the county won't loan them a dime.
Hmm.
And the county
Wow.
won't. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Oceano has 350,000 a year coming from you. Los Osos surely could use $350,000 a year. San Simeon, of all of them, has a 60% Hispanic community. They are an extreme disadvantaged community. That's the only one in the county. Extreme. And they aren't getting the help from the county. And I and,
Oh
and
dear.
because I've watched Oceano so much, millions and millions of dollars have been put into infrastructure in Oceano through county grant. The drainage systems mainly, and sidewalks and some of that. They've put zero into sense. So I
Wow.
look at that, and I'm a liberal, and I'm a Libra, and I everything and everything has to be fair. I want things to be fair. And I can see the inequity there, and it just drives me.
Unbelievable.
Oceano can make it, but San Simeon's not
Yeah.
making it,
No.
and they're
Wow.
taking far too long to dissolve
Mm.
that. Because
Yeah.
once they take them in, I don't like everything the county does, and I've been a critic of theirs. But what I see is that they do have sophistication that some of these little districts just don't.
All they would need to do is fire one high-paid executive whose total
Yeah,
package would be 350,000, and they could help, what, 5,000 people in
yeah,
San Simeon. I
yeah.
think that's a fair trade.
It would be. It would be. Well, the thing is, there's only 450 people that live there.
Oh, it's
450
it's
people.
only they could
It's
help
tiny.
450
They
people.
could they
Mhm.
could help them a lot with that kind of money.
Yeah. Yeah, every
Yeah.
year. Is there anything in particular you think we should cover?
Be a watchdog.
Mm.
Everybody has the right to be that watchdog. If it doesn't look right, ask questions. Engage your council people. They may say, "Oh, I don't want to violate the Brown Act," but they can talk to you. And
Mhm.
they certainly write letters, emails. Most of them are pretty accessible that way. Also learn what is in their purview, because
Yes.
sometimes if you're wasting your own time, you're wasting their time if you go to the city council and ask about Social Security. You
Yeah.
can't help them.
Yeah.
And you want to help them, and you might have a phone number to give them, but you can't help them, with the details. So just know what's in the jurisdiction of the person you're approaching, and then be a watchdog. Because if you're seeing things that don't look right, there might be some shenanigans going
It's
on.
worth investigating the red flags. I often, especially after I first came out with my happiest corruptions history, I get a lot of questions. Well, how do you know if there's corruption? And honestly, people's guts tell them. If it doesn't pass the smell test, ask the questions.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's nothing there, but usually there is something there that ought to be addressed
Yeah.
one way or the
And
other.
even if it's not a criminal act, how they do business can change. They can be more approachable, more transparent, they can be professional. You,
Yes.
there's some expectation of professionalism, and I've seen all of it go out the window. But
Yeah.
it's not always illegal, but expectations of professionalism are equally important.
And I think especially when you realize how much more our local agency executives are paid by comparison to the people who are funding, it
Yes.
becomes all the more important that they do their job with tremendous diligence.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And those should be our expectations, that those
Indeed.
people, hold them accountable. You are paying them. They work for you. Like we just said, expectations, and hold them in accountability.
And really quickly, the ballot measures are very interesting because I believe since 1910 or 11, when they were first enacted, because the railroads had too much power and the legislature of the state felt that people were getting railroaded. And so they established these ballot measures that we could do. But I believe there have only been 440 or something, a very small number actually, over that 150. In
Wow.
that 115 years, I don't remember how many there have been that have been successful in this county, but there have been quite a few in the last 2 years. In Grover Beach, we've had two successful ones, got another one coming on the ballot, and then fourth one about the tall buildings in our coastal
Right.
zone. I think that we have to ask the question. I think it's wonderful that citizens are taking advantage of an opportunity to have direct democracy when their elected officials aren't serving them to
Mhm.
their in the way they like to be served.
Right.
But I think we have to really look at what is going on that the public feels they have to take their government into their own hands
Yeah. Well,
legally.
and it is unfortunate that when people, because you to avoid that, you would have people on the council. So you want to start with people who represent you getting elected,
It's who you elect.
who
Hmm.
you elect.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, land use for sure is political. I take my hat off to Grover Beach and the citizens there, and how hard you all have worked. And it's amazing what you've accomplished. Some wins, some losses, but it is amazing. In my
Thank you,
town,
Julie.
we moved to sewer. We had a
Yeah.
recall of 3 board members, and that's been 20 years ago, but it changed the course of history, and for the
So
good.
looking back over those 20 years, do you believe it was an improvement? I mean, hindsight's wonderful.
100%.
Uh-huh. Good.
100% an improvement. They were going to build the sewer plant in the middle of my town. They were going to decorate it as a park,
Decorated
and decorate it, and
like a Christmas
literally,
tree, huh?
well, architecturally, and they
Oh, I
tried to
see.
bury it, and
Yeah.
put green grass on top of it, and a dog park, all the things that they want the Sunnyside School for, they were going to put on top of the sewer plant at a cost to me. And the cost to build a sewer is a box with a row of trees around it. You don't have to make it. And so I was instrumental in fighting that
I,
proposal.
I, I remember.
And then it actually, because so many of us were opposed to it, we got elected, full 5-member board. But the board before us did some real damage by entering into contracts, tearing up streets, clearing the
Hmm.
land. They put us $40 million in debt, and we had to file for bankruptcy protection. And I always say bankruptcy protection. That's what bankruptcy is. It's not that you are destitute and poor, it's that you need to protect the assets you have. And so we had to protect our staff, we had to protect our fire department and all of our fire trucks
Mhm.
because the creditors were
And the
coming
public,
after
I mean, essentially the
everything.
public.
Those
Yeah.
are the public's items, yes,
Mhm.
assets. So we filed for bankruptcy protection. It was embarrassing. It was the hardest decision besides the divorce that I had to make in my life, but it was necessary and it
Yeah.
was the right thing to do. Ultimately, it did cost a lot more money because of delays. Time is money. But it was the right thing to do in that it saved the downtown, improving property values all around it.
Yes.
Looking at it today, those
Yeah.
homes would not be worth what they are if
No.
there was a sewer plant. So
No.
it was
Yeah.
100% the
Yeah.
right.
Well, thank you. That's interesting. And Julie,
This
I
is a
do really
pleasure.
appreciate you
Thank
sharing.
you.
And
It's
okay,
been a pleasure.
thank you for
Thanks.
all your help.